William Hill Vegas sponsors Joshua vs. Whyte on Sky Sports Box Office.
Can you give me a prediction for Joshua and Dillian Whyte? Or
my prediction, going on current form, I actually watched the Dillian Whyte Joshua fight from 7 years ago, or whatever it was, the 2009, last night. 3 rounds, 3 2-minute rounds, and Dillian Whyte at that stage was a little more polished, a little bit more tidy, a little bit more experienced. Although Dillian Whyte was only having his first amateur fight, I watched it. I was like, no, this guy isn't having his first amateur fight. So I remember someone talking about him having a lot of kickboxing fights. So I checked his kickboxing record out, and he was a British heavyweight kickboxing champion for 3 years prior to that fight. So, okay, you got one kid who's had 3 combat fights in his whole life versus someone who's a former kickboxing champion. I know where my money would go, and what happened, how I anticipated the fights to happen. It went, Joshua was a bit green, didn't really know how to handle the pressure, and he just got beat. I think he lost all of the rounds. But since then, what have both fighters done? Dillian Whyte, he actually got his amateur license taken off of him because he was a professional kickboxer. You can't be a professional and an amateur at the same time. So he had that taken off him, and he turned pro. Then he had a 2-year ban, which isn't good for any young heavyweight coming through. 2 years of inactivity, not for injury, just because he's had his license taken off him, for whatever reason. So I got to go with the guy who's got the consistency, the guy who was the world championship silver medalist, Olympic gold medalist, a guy who hasn't put a foot wrong, and a guy who has fought at a higher level as a professional, beating Johnson and unbeaten fighters like the guy fought in his last fight. I just can't see. If it's a street fight, it's a different story.
Really?
Yeah, in a street fight, because remember, Dillian Whyte's a cage fighter, mate. He's a kickboxer who's had an MMA fight. He's a fighter, an all-round fighter. But this is a boxing match. No kicks.
But in a street fight, you'd say Dillian Whyte was better.
In a street fight, 100% Dillian Whyte. He's just going to kick his legs in. That's it. But in a boxing match, a professional boxing match, over 12 rounds, I think the superior athlete is Anthony Joshua. I believe the superior boxing skills are with Anthony Joshua. The rough and toughness, I'll go with Dillian Whyte. I think he's a bit rougher, a bit tougher. He's probably had it a lot harder in his life. But I'd go with Anthony Joshua just because he's the superior boxer, and he's proven that through his amateur pedigree says that he's just a whole level above. It's like me beating somebody. It's like me beating Ronaldo at a 5-a-side football match 7 years ago, beating him 2-0, and then holding that as some sort of confidence. And now, even though he's then won Champions League, won this, done that, he's moved on. Dillian Whyte, unfortunately, has been held back as a professional. 2 years out. While in the 2 years out, Anthony Joshua was winning medals, was winning gold medals, and I think it's just not going to be his night tomorrow night. I'd like it. I'd love him to be able to make this a 50-50 exchange. I'm hoping for that, but I just can't see Joshua falling apart like he fell apart when they fought many years ago. So I'd say that's about it.
William Hill Vegas sponsors Joshua vs. Whyte on Sky Sports Box Office.